Okay, I understand what most of you guys are thinking, and I have to at least address this before we make today's video. John Beilein is not anything like the last major college basketball head coach that decided to take his talents to the NBA but ultimately failed. And if you don't know who I'm talking about Rick Pitino. I don't know if you guys know this. This could be way before your time. This was before my time. This was when I was 4 years old, but the Boston Celtics hired Rick Pitino out of the college ranks, and it was considered to be a very big splash. He got this 10-year, $70 million contract, and not only was he the head coach, but he was also the president of basketball operations for the Boston Celtics. And to save us a bunch of time, it was just an absolute poop fest. And this is how we could compare him to John Beilein. Rick Pitino's schemes just didn't work in the NBA. His coaching style didn't work in the NBA, and as a result of that, he flopped. Now, you have to also bear in mind that not every college basketball coach that goes to the NBA ends up being a flop. And I'll give you an example of that in just a moment. Guys, if you watch a lot of my content, you haven't subscribed yet, we are 8,000 subscribers away from hitting 300,000 subscribers on this channel. So just if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that sub button. And if you're subscribed but you really want to go the extra mile and show your boy some love, turn on those notifications. I also do this on another channel for football, and that channel is called Microphone. If you're a football fan, check it out. A link to that's in the description down below. And check out my first viral TikTok, bro. Literally, I made my first viral TikTok. I'm kind of hyped about it. It's the same as my YouTube channel name. It's at TheFlightMike on TikTok, which is the same as my Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook as well. So now that I got that out of the way in about 45 minutes, there's one glaring example of a successful coach in the college ranks that was able to make his way to the NBA. And I wonder if anyone was able to guess it as I was talking from the beginning of the video. So let me know in the comment section who I'm thinking about. He's currently a coach in the NBA, and your time is up. I'm talking about Brad Stevens, the head coach of the Boston Celtics. So it's not one of those things where if you were successful in the NCAA and then you go to the NBA, you're not going to be successful. It's not black and white like that. The fact of the matter is, John Beilein seems like a very old school head coach, and it seems like he's having a difficult time relating to his players. And that is one of the main reasons that he might step down as head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers. So the news is, if you guys didn't hear, I got so many blurbs about this last night. John Beilein is a first-year head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers. He pretty much stepped down as head coach of the Michigan Wolverines, which is a very, very prestigious college basketball program, to take this job with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, this isn't the first time the Cleveland Cavaliers try to make such a hire. The Cavs actually made a run at Tom Izzo about 10 years ago when LeBron James was about to be a free agent. And Tom Izzo, being the smart man that he is, said that he will take the job if LeBron James was to remain a Cavalier. We know what ultimately happened that summer. LeBron James would take his talents to South Beach, join the Miami Heat. Tom Izzo would remain with the Michigan State Spartans. He would coach players like Draymond Green, and you get what happens there. So what's the issue with John Beilein? Why is he going to step down so quickly? And are the Cavs going about this in the correct way? So I'll tell you what would happen if he was to step down, and then we'll talk about whether he should step down or if he shouldn't step down. If you ask me, if he does step down in the middle of the season, it would just look really bad upon the Cleveland Cavaliers front office. We're talking about a team that won a championship 4 years ago and subsequently botched every single major decision that they've had to make ever since then. And I'm sorry, if you're a Cavs fan, I don't mean to go in on you, but whenever I see poor ownership and a poor use of a team, I have to call it out. So let's start with the botched Kyrie Irving trade, where the Cavaliers literally traded a former #1 overall pick and NBA Finals hero, Kyrie Irving, to the Boston Celtics for Isaiah Thomas, whose stock was fairly high at the time, but we know what would end up happening with Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, and Ante Zizic, and I think they got a first-round pick out of it as well. And that was it. None of those pieces became anything for the Cleveland Cavaliers. None of those pieces became relevant for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So what's the next big thing that they had to do? Well, they still had LeBron James on the roster for the 2017 NBA season, And they were still the favorite in a weak Eastern Conference. So what do you do at that point? You're supposed to surround LeBron James with as much talent as you possibly can, so you could get those, so you could, one, potentially get him in the NBA Finals again, but two, try to convince him to stay in Cleveland. But that's not what happened. Dan Gilbert brought in Kobe Altman, and once David Griffin went, this is when things really got bad. David Griffin was gone by the time the Kyrie Irving trade went down, by the way. That was not his decision. But I believe David Griffin's departure was the beginning of the end for this franchise, because David Griffin and LeBron James seemed to be on the same page. Kobe Altman tried his best, but Kobe Altman comes in and just begins to, he does his best. I have to give it to him. He brought in George Hill. He brought in Rodney Hood. He really tried his best to put a good team around LeBron James, but ultimately LeBron James would end up leaving Cleveland. He also didn't get along with Dan Gilbert, so that was another issue. Ever since then, the Cleveland Cavaliers began their descent back into mediocrity. And what sucks about this is I feel like they're going to be stuck in mediocrity for another 10 to 15 years, because they just seem like the type of franchise that's consistently making the same mistakes over and over and over again, and they never learn from them. And once they do get what they want, once they do get lucky enough to have one of the greatest players in NBA history to happen to be born in Ohio, who felt like he owed something to Cleveland, once they got that, and they ended up squandering it and losing it. They could have easily won more than one championship with LeBron James, if you ask me. But I feel like there were so many behind-the-scenes issues between LeBron and Dan Gilbert that never ended up happening. Now, why am I bringing all this up? This has nothing to do with John Beilein. Well, you need to understand that you could make an argument for either John Beilein or the Cavaliers. The Cavaliers feel like their head coach was not able to develop a good relationship with Colin Sexton and Darius Garland. And the reason why that's frustrating is the reason why he was brought in was he had this reputation of developing players in Michigan. He would get players that typically weren't the greatest and make them look really freaking good. And that's why the Cavaliers brought him in, because the Cavaliers are banking on players like Colin Sexton and Darius Garland, who have potential but aren't the sexiest names in the NBA right now. So now that they're in year one and they see things aren't going so well and it's been a rough year, the Cavaliers are starting to have second thoughts. But you have to bear in mind, there were a lot of things that didn't go the Cavs' year this year. For one, Kevin Love got injured and he was out for a large period of time. For two, they're paying Tristan Thompson an obscene amount of money, and they're not really able to bring in any other free agents. The issue the Cleveland Cavaliers are having isn't their head coach, rather, it's the culture that they failed to create. And that's why they're stuck in this NBA cellar currently. If you can't create a winning culture, no one's going to want to come and play for you. It doesn't matter if you're Cleveland. It doesn't matter if you're Utah. If Utah, with all due respect, nothing against people that live in Utah, it's a beautiful area. But if Utah could build a culture, which they currently are. Like, whenever I see Utah on the schedule, I'm like, wow, we have a tough test going up against the Lakers today. Like, whenever one of my teams has to play against the Jazz, I actually am nervous because they developed a culture over there. Yeah, it just took a trade of Dante Exum for Jordan Clarkson, but they developed a culture over there. So what I think is going to end up happening, well, first of all, I'm very sad that John Beilein would step down. I feel like he didn't get the greatest opportunity to showcase his talents in the NBA. I don't. You inherited the worst team, like literally one of the worst teams in the NBA. Yeah, you have Kevin Love. You didn't put him in the best position to succeed. And yeah, maybe your schemes are off, but I would have liked to see him at least finish the year off. And I would like to see what he could do at an NBA level. But I think he could ultimately become a successful NBA head coach, but I don't think he wants that. I think it would involve him taking that route where you have to be an assistant coach for a little bit, sit behind a reputable NBA head coach, see what they do, and eventually become a head coach. I don't see him doing that. I feel like he would much rather go back to the college ranks and just do his thing in college because it worked out for him in college. Now, obviously, Michigan isn't going to take him back, but what do I think the Cavaliers are going to end up doing? Well, apparently, if their head coach, John Beilein, does step down, which he is considering right now, first of all, if they if he doesn't step down, the Cavs are unlikely to bring him back. But if he does step down this year, apparently he's going, the head coach that's going to take over for him was a coach that I believe most recently was the head coach for the Memphis Grizzlies before their current head coach, and that's JB Bickerstaff. And, you know, what's really interesting is I feel like JB Bickerstaff, it's only a matter of time before he gets a chance to truly coach at an NBA level, but I don't see how this is much better than having John Beilein. I can't help but feel like that little thug incident that happened earlier in the season where a bunch of his players got mad at him for calling them thugs. I feel like that has a hand in this, but at the same time, I can't help but feel like that's just a coaching tactic. I mean, I don't mean to potentially dance on the political correctness line here, but is calling your players thugs to like light a fire under their ass so bad? Is it that big of a deal? Is there something I'm missing there? Is that the reason he's getting fired? I'm not exactly sure. All I know is I really wish that this guy got more of an opportunity to show us what he's doing in the NBA. And I feel like if he comes back and studies better schemes in the offseason, and the Cavs give him another chance, it could they could trend towards a stable culture. You know, no one wants to play for a team who's consistently swapping out head coaches year after year after year, especially after you fired the only head coach to win an NBA championship for you. Let me know what you guys think about the Cavs situation right now in the comment section, guys. I'm your boy, TheFlightMike, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode.